game that he couldn't miss. So you just got me, Spen, but I'm not alone today. I'm joined by senior host for Sports Illustrated and diehard Nets fan, Robin Lundberg. Robin, what's going on, brother?
Yo, what's up with your partner, man? He's Kyrie or Harden in you, not showing up for the games.
So my partner's actually my little brother.
Okay,
and he doesn't deal with stress and anxiety well. So this is probably the most stressful time to be a Nets fan. I told him to take the week off, play some ball, get your head straight, work past the trade deadline, and then you'll come back next week and we can break down what happened.
All right, gotcha. You're a good teammate and a good big brother. I thought he was just going, do you have any mandates for the show that he is not in compliance with?
In all honesty, Robin, my brother misses a lot of shows. I would be remiss to tell you this is his first. He has a pretty long leash with me. He gets away with a lot. Let's just say that. But then he gets mad when I don't give him credit for the show. I say it's my show. He goes, whoa, I'm 50% of Fireside Nets. I'm like, yeah, bullshit. You take off every other week. So, it's tough being the big brother. You try to set an example. You try to be nice, but at the end of the day, you get taken advantage of.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, it's especially this does feel like more your platform, though. So
it is.
He's not getting quite the same shine. He's not. I mean, I know it's only two of you, so it's not a KD Harden situation or a KD Kyrie situation. He's more like Joe Harris.
It's like Kobe and he's Meta World Peace. If we're going back to the Lakers championship,
I see that. Meta hit a big shot though.
He did. He was important to that championship team. Yeah. All right, let's get into some Nets talk. They're 29-24. They're 4.5 back of first place, 8 straight losses. Their last win was on January 21st against the Spurs. We have no Kevin Durant until the All-Star break, barely any James Harden as of late, and Kyrie only for away games. So my first question to you is, how confident are you that this team can still compete for a championship this season despite everything going on?
Well, look, I think if you're going to answer this honestly, you have to live somewhere between the two extremes, right? And in one extreme, our hair is on fire. We're running around. It's all over with. It's all over with, right? On the other extreme is probably where I was before and many fans were before, which is we're unbeatable. Nobody can beat the Nets block, right? It's somewhere between those two extremes right now. Only a fool would say there aren't issues. And by issues, I really mean, I'm not even talking about the roster improvements or anything like that. I'm talking about with the superstars. And the fact that both James Harden and Kyrie Irving have let Kevin Durant down. Kyrie Irving has done so by going AWOL last year into the thing this year. And let's be real about it. And I think, by the way, one, I'm hopeful that the mandate changes by playoff time. And I don't think it makes any sense. But regardless, it's Kyrie's decision to be in the spot he's in, and that is what set off the chain of events that have happened since. Then there is James Harden, who he had me fooled last year because he came here and he was hooping, which I knew he could do, and he was also leading. And, he has every right to be frustrated with Kyrie, but KD getting hurt for a few weeks, them's just the breaks. And Harden is kind of revealed himself in a certain way in the midst of all this. So both those guys have let KD down. I think some of these leaks you've seen are KD kind of trying to put out there, it's time to get serious. Now, maybe he's coddled Kyrie a little bit too much and he should have taken a harder tack there. I don't know. So there's real issues. There's real drama behind the scenes. We may see a James Harden trade this week. I think it is a guarantee we're going to see some trades from the team in general. So no one would say there aren't issues. With that said, I believe the Nets are still the betting favorites to win the NBA championship. I believe that Kevin Durant will come back from injury and play again for the team. I believe that at least one of Kyrie Irving or James Harden, if not both, will still be on the roster. And if one is not on the roster, there will be those who come back in that deal. So the Nets are absolutely still title contenders. I mean, it's an NBA problem that a team can lose. What have they lost? 8 games in a row now?
8 straight.
8 straight games and it not end their season, or come close to ending their season. That should almost be a season-ending blow. But I don't care about the record right now. I'm not really worried about the record. I'm not worried about the play-in tournament. If the Nets, first of all, if KD comes back and they they are retooled out of the break. They're not going to be in the play-in tournament. But if they are, I'm not worried about them losing in the play-in tournament if they've got the guys that they're supposed to have. So I think it's somewhere between the two extremes right now. You have to remember that it's February. You have to remember who is still employed by the organization, while also acknowledging that things are not well at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. I mean, we suck right now. We don't have our best player. Our best player got us to the number one in the East for weeks. I mean, the Nets were number one for a few weeks, and then he goes down. All of a sudden, you fall to 6. So it happens. Kevin Durant's still on the team. You're going to get him back eventually. But I'm glad you brought up James Harden because we do have the trade deadline approaching. So what does your gut say? Will James Harden be a Net after Thursday?
No.
Wow. Okay.
Gut. That's my gut based on the fact that all this is out there. Now that my head says there's still a good chance he's there come Thursday. Here's the thing. Because none of us have what my gut says, what I'm guessing.
Right.
Let me give you what I think about the situation rather than what I think is going to happen. They cannot allow the James Harden trade to become an abject failure. So no matter what, transpires between now and then, either James Harden needs to be back and playing motivated and committed to the team, or he needs to be dealt. Now, I suppose you could try and wait to the summer. I just worry about losing leverage, and when a situation is bad, don't allow it to just fester. And there are some plus sides to a deal as well. The downsides are this: you lose James Harden, you gave up what you gave up for James Harden. James Harden, as of last season, was still a top 5 player in the NBA. Hasn't played like that this year. The upsides to a deal are: do you love the idea of signing the current version of James Harden to the biggest extension in NBA history? Or, would you rather have a 25-year-old Ben Simmons and Seth Curry and a first-round pick, and then maybe make a second trade involving Nick Claxton and other pieces to augment the roster around Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving?
So to answer that question, I don't think that this version of Harden is the version of Harden that we're going to get to finish out his career. I think that he had, not a full offseason. So he comes in a little bit out. He had to, quote unquote, play his way into shape. That didn't look great. Then he finally sort of gets in shape. He had that stretch against the Lakers and the Clippers where he actually had an amazing 2 games in LA. And then since then, he's had a good game here or there, but we haven't gotten that elite James Harden as we've seen in the past. So this is not his year, but would I not want to sign him to the extension? I don't know. I still think the best of James Harden is in the past, but we still have the pretty good yet to come.
Well, look, I mean, it's a quandary. I mean, it's tough but there are those concerns. He's never been known to be a guy that takes great care of himself necessarily. Or
he's an eater.
Yeah, well, he's a partier, it seems, at least.
Yeah.
If he's not a partier, he's
gaining weight somehow, and it's not muscle weight. So I'm with you.
Yeah. And he's been flailing for calls. The effort's been inexcusable. I mean, he's just been out straight dogging it out there, and that's why I said last year, I thought, oh man, this guy must have a bad rep because he came over and he was vocal. He was playing defense. He was still playing at a very high level. So I don't know if, not trading him and then Durant coming back reignites that fire or whatnot. But there's clearly this is not made up. There's clearly something going on. The Woj piece today was basically a hit piece on Harden,
right.
Where it insinuated that he's faking his injury right now or whatever's going on, and that the team is not happy with his motivation. So I mean, I can see I'm torn on it. I'm really split 50-50 because I can see a reality where, look, that to say this hasn't worked isn't really true because we just haven't seen it. I mean, these guys have played 16 games together. When they've been out there, they would have won the title last year.
Right.
If the injuries didn't happen, right? It would have worked. They would have won the title. It is what it is. It happened. Now, though, I see I can make the case that this team with let's say Ben Simmons playing the 5 and Kevin Durant playing the 4 and Seth Curry coming back to help with the absence of Joe Harris. I use him as an example. You bolster up the depth a little bit in another trade. That could really work too. You could pick up the pace. The ball wouldn't be in Harden's hands all the time. So it's a bad spot to be in because of how we got here. Like, it's a bad spot given what the Nets traded. And you just don't like that perception out in the universe, that this could happen for the franchise. But it's not that bad a spot from like the biggest 30,000 foot view. When you go down and you say, all right, these are the pieces you're working with still, and here are your options on the table, where option A is keep James Harden, or option B is trade James Harden for Ben Simmons and more.
Yeah, I mean, the Ben Simmons part of it is what I'm not sure of. I don't know if I like the prospect of Simmons playing with KD and Kyrie. And I'll tell you this, I don't know if KD wants to play with Ben Simmons. Like, I don't know if that's something that he would be 100% into. That's the other part of it. And I guess follow-up question, does KD have any say in a situation like this? Like, is he talking to Sean Marks at all? Is Sean Marks saying to KD, hey, here's what I'm talking about with Daryl Morey and the Sixers over there? Or is he just sort of left in the dark? And if they make the trade, he's got to kind of play with whoever they trade for?
I don't think he's left in the dark about anything. I think, look, I don't think Kyrie's back if it's not for KD. Right. I don't know. I don't have that on the record. I don't know that for a fact. But I do not believe Kyrie's playing half the time if it's not for KD. And you can make that a critique of KD if you want, who I almost have nothing bad to say about. Like, through all this mess, the one thing that is keeping the Nets on the brink of like complete disaster is that Kevin Durant signed an extension, and he is locked up, and he's done nothing but hoop and not complain about it, not complain about the rule changes, not complain about the minutes played, not cause any distractions whatsoever. I mean, he said, let me die out there when it comes to like straight hooper. But if there's one critique of Kevin Durant, it could be like, he's close to Kyrie in the sense where it then looks like favoritism. And I believe that Kevin Durant had say in Kyrie coming back part-time. And I don't believe that the organization would make a decision as big as trading James Harden without the very least consulting with him.
Okay, that part is interesting. What would your perfect trade scenario from a realistic standpoint look like with James Harden to the Sixers?
I basically have said it a couple times. I think I would say
Simmons, Curry,
and a first.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
I'm trying not to. I mean, you want to keep asking for more and more, but I'm trying to be realistic on what.
No, I get it. I get it.
You get one of the draft picks back that you traded. You get Simmons and you get Curry, and then, like I said, I would consider then flipping some of the other parts in a separate trade.
I think that's fair. I think the one thing I don't want to see is Mark settle for a Danny Green, Ben Simmons move, because I do not think Danny Green is close to the player that Seth Curry is right now at this point in his career. So I don't want to see that. I don't want to see us get fleeced and get a half-assed Danny Green and a Ben Simmons who, let's face it, we don't know what he's going to be like. He hasn't played basketball in however many months.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they're trying to move out of Danny Green or move out of Tobias Harris, then you just have to start talking about attaching picks and more to incentivize taking that on. But it's Ben Simmons plus for me. Let me put it that way, whatever that turns out to be. And then again, like I said, I would consider trading Claxton, maybe packaging Claxton and Harris, depending to see, and that's the other thing. It's very clear now Joe Harris is not coming back, or he's coming back in a extremely limited capacity. Right. If that's the case, like you don't need the full report to know that. We've gotten it. He's been out way longer than he was supposed to be out. They're already saying he needs a second surgery, right? Or a second procedure, which means he needs his ankle rebuilt. Basically,
did that get confirmed? I know that was floated out there. I didn't know if that got confirmed because he said he didn't want to get it in the last press conference.
He may need, or they said, but
it's bad.
What they're hinting at is that he did something to try and fix it. It hasn't worked as well as possible, and he's going to try and play through that, putting off whatever needs to be done, or he's going to get whatever needs to be done now, depending on whether he can play through it.
Okay. Final Harden question. Assuming Harden doesn't get traded, let's say he remains in net. what kind of James Harden do you see us getting for the second half of the season?
Well, the way he's been playing of late is not acceptable. There's certain things, certain aspects are you can't avoid it. If he's declined a little bit, he's declined a little bit. Them's the breaks, his hamstring or whatever. But I want to see him in shape. I want to see him playing with effort. Those things he can control. And again, it's so annoying talking about it because you always have to come back to it. You always have to come back to the Kyrie thing. Like,
I know,
no matter what, you have to come back to Kyrie's playing status. And if Kyrie's playing, James Harden can play the facilitator role. He can be the facilitator for the team who chips in on the scoring. It's crazy as it sounds, chips in on the scoring. But they have the two best scorers in the world, maybe, in Durant and Irving. And if he plays good defense, and is committed and has the right mind state and is giving you 22, 9, and 8 or whatever with decent efficiency, that's fine if Irving is playing. But that part needs to be solved regardless of whether Harden's there or not, is Kyrie's status too. So it's twofold. It's with both of those guys. There's a problem with both of those guys.
Yeah, and whenever Kyrie Irving speaks to the media, he sounds optimistic. Like he's going to play in home games. He goes, yeah, I'll hold out hope. Is there anything that we're hearing? I mean, you mentioned the mandate changing before the playoffs. Why does he sound sort of optimistic when they ask him these questions?
Well, if you saw New Jersey today announce that they're going to end mandates for masks for kids in school in March.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with Kyrie, but it's a sign, like some of these things are going to start coming down. And I believe, let me reference it. The mandate that requires a proof of vaccination status at indoor businesses is set to expire on February 10th in New York. So some of these things, they're not like in forever. They have these expiration dates. And I think when they hit the expiration date, the mood of the people, and this is beside the point because Kyrie could have gotten vaccinated a long time ago, been done with it. It's not the first issue with Kyrie. That's part of what makes me more irritated about it than anything else. It's not whether he's I don't care. I honestly don't care whether he has the vaccine. Either the vaccine works or it doesn't. I got 3 of the things. Once that happened, I'm not freaking worried about what you're doing.
I get it.
And so, and by the way, Kyrie just had COVID. So if we're trusting the science, he should have a level of, the whole thing makes no sense. My issue with Kyrie is that this is not the only thing. If it wasn't this, it's something else. It feels like what happened last year, but he could have ended it. He could be there, all that. But it does seem like the mood of the public, and this is now beyond any political divide. This is, I think, across the aisles. Some people have been more like, take your mask off and throw in the garbage. And others, for a while were like, you cannot, you must think of everyone else, but I think for the rational amongst us that, 70, let's say like 70% of us, whatever it is, 65, 70% of us are now kind of at least in the same ballpark where we're thinking this thing is here, clearly we're not eradicating it. Right. Clearly, it's not, there's nothing we can do to make it completely disappear. Luckily, fortunately, it seems as if the severity of it has waned as more people have been vaccinated, more people have immunity, the strains mutate, whatever they do, the science stuff, right? And I think most people now agree it's time to live with it the best we can and go forward. We can't hide forever. And with that comes the logic that, therefore, why are we then going to, hold some of these hardline stances in place? So I think with that mood shift, you will start to see some of those harder stances fall. And remember, it is February. I have to keep reminding myself, February. When do the playoffs start? March? 2 months or so?
Right. We got about 60 days for something to change. And you're saying the way it's trending, it looks like everything's getting better. Right.
Cases are going to continue to go down. I think it is moving in that. I don't know for sure that that's going to happen, but I see some of these expire again. They're making those. Remember last year when they told everybody you didn't have to wear masks anymore,
right?
And then everybody, I think we see that without it being a pump fake this time around.
All right, that's fair. I mean, look, I think every single Nets fan has been praying the entire season that Kyrie Irving will eventually be allowed to play home games. And if he isn't, I mean, let's face it, he handicapped the Brooklyn Nets in a year that they would have won a championship at full strength with him at home, with Harden actually giving a shit. But the fact that he was only able to play away games, he wasn't able to play home games. You know, you look into the playoffs, that's not something that Nets fans are going to go to games 1 or 2, 3, and 4, whatever the case may be, and they're not going to get to watch one of the star players on the team. I always thought, from a logic perspective, if you're Kyrie, how can you mentally want to only play in front of away team fans? You're going to constantly get booed everywhere you go. You're not going to get any cheer, any applause. So the whole situation just bothers me. I've lost faith that we're going to see him play home games this season, but I hope what you're saying is accurate. I hope that, hopefully New York City sort of gets it and they change this silly rule, because let's face it, at the end of the day, whichever side of the fence you're on, if an unvaccinated player can come into Brooklyn for the away team and play, but the guy on our team can't, the rule doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons the rule doesn't. I mean, that's one of them, right? Like
that's my favorite one.
There are other cities with athlete exemptions. Like I said before, there's no accounting for the fact that, I don't even know if I think he could take the vaccine now, but I think it would be recommended against taking the vaccine so soon out of getting COVID, right? Like that is a thing. Like for us who say, and like I said, I'm triple vax. Like for people who are science, who say believe in the science, trust the science. Part of the science is natural immunity from COVID as well. Right. It's the vaccine is the preferable method for most, because it means less likely if you get COVID, it hurts you or even decreases your risk of catching it in the first place. But once you do have it, and we're getting close to 100% of the population either being vaccinated or having contracted COVID. Now, that natural immunity doesn't last forever, but that's how you get to endemic. That's how you get to treating it like you would any other illness, where if you're sick, stay home. And if you're not, this guy's been getting tested every day on a team where the entire team has been vaccinated and basically had COVID already. It just, there's no logical safety reason for it to still be in place. It's just performative at this point.
I get it. My final question in regards to the trade deadline: is there any other player or team, not Philadelphia, that you'd like to see Sean Marks make a move for that would make sense? Are there any names you're hearing that are getting floated out there for the Brooklyn Nets?
I mean, I saw the Jeremy Grant thing earlier today. I don't think that's who they land. I have to, like I was saying, I think a couple things you want to look for on the team, and whether that be a stretch five that can play the Jeff Green role from last year at times. That's something they haven't exactly replicated. I think a two-way wing is another thing that them and everybody else is going to be out on the lookout for. But I don't have the names right off the top of my head that I've been thinking about, because it's just been so dominated by the James Harden, Ben Simmons trade. That's right. I do think some of those pieces can come back in that trade. And then, like I said, I think you look and try and flip some of the rest. I think you'll see a one way or the other, you're going to see a group of new players coming in.
I was really hoping for, you said a two-way player, like a Robert Covington type. And then I was pissed when I heard he got traded to the Clippers. But a player like that, I mean, Sean Marks signed DeAndre Bembry, Bruce Brown, James Johnson, and they all kind of do the same thing. They're all glue guys who are hustle players, who can play a decent defense, who are pretty limited offensively. Yeah. And you combine that with the fact that Blake Griffin's been up and down this year. Javon Carter is terrible. We'll get to him in a bit. I have a list of breaking down players, but he's almost unplayable at this point. And you just have, outside of Patty Mills and with the injury to Joe Harris, you don't have anybody that can shoot the three-point shot that well.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, and that's been an issue. The spacing. It's also been a function of who's been hurt. I mean, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving not playing for much of the season, playing half the time, Harden being in and out of the lineup, and Joe Harris. That's a lot of freaking shooting.
It is. I mean,
so I think that roster was initially constructed with that in mind. that and Patty Mills, by the way, is a good shooter. That's 5.
Right. He's the one guy that's been consistent.
He's been the one reliable shooter all year. So that's like 5+ shooters. They just back end of the bench, they didn't have shooting, and that's something they depth of shooting is something they have to address, especially in light of the Harris situation. But I do think injury, you take away most team in history, you take away 4 of their top guys for a chunk of the season, it's going to hurt.
No, I get that. I look at the way like the Heat were constructed with LeBron, D-Wade, and Bosh, where you had guys like Mike Miller, Shane Battier, Ray Allen. I mean, these were guys that could come in and hit big shots. All right, we have Patty Mills. The fact that you don't have Joe Harris, that was a need right away, right? When Joe Harris got hurt, having three-point shooting was a need. And I understand James Harden, Kyrie, and KD are all great shooters in their own respect, although Harden's been pretty inconsistent from 3 this year. I still would have liked Marks when we were giving out those 10 days, to give a guy with a three-point shot a chance. I'm glad that Kessler Edwards has kind of emerged out of these rookies as the one guy who's a catch-and-shoot three-point player. Like, he can hit that shot in the baseline, but I don't know. I'd like to see, Robert Covington's gone. I'm trying to think who else. If you can give up nothing and get Danny Green, like I would love to add a guy like that to the roster for the right value, but I don't know. I'm at the point where you're not really playing Bruce Brown. James Johnson is in the Javon Carter territory for me with his play lately. And DeAndre Bembry serves his purpose, but he's still not a three-point shooter. So I look at it.
They're redundant too. I mean, you're right. You're not wrong. They're redundant. And that's going to be, but that's all going to be addressed, I think.
Yeah.
Come up. This is not the team. The Nets need a fresh restart out of the All-Star break. We're going to see what they look like the rest of. That's what it's ugly right now. But some of these guys are, and that's part of the reason they're probably. A couple of reasons they're not playing well right now. One is the drama around the team.
Sure.
2 is the team that's on the floor is not good.
Right.
And
let's not forget about Lamarcus Aldridge, by the way. Has not played the last few games. He's been a very reliable scorer for the Nets off the bench.
And Claxton hasn't played much of this time either. I mean, you're really talking about 5 of their key guys.
Right.
And then the last time is, these guys know what's up. So there's a bunch of guys who are playing or around the team right now who don't know if they're going to be here beyond Thursday. So that's just a human nature thing that's going to have an impact. So we'll see what happens with the trade deadline. We'll see what happens when Durant gets back and the Nets get judged as a product again after the All-Star break.
I think that's fair. I wanted to do a quick segment. It's called Breaking Down Everybody Who's Not on the Big Three. So I basically made these categories, and I want you to tell me if I'm off or spot on with these categories. You ready?
Okay.
We'll start with playing well. Blake Griffin, Cam Thomas, and Kessler Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, for the first 2, especially of late, I mean, I like Kessler Edwards and I like what he can possibly bring as a shooter, defender. He's tailed off a little bit as he's been taking a bigger role, probably more than, is fair for him right now. But overall, I agree with that assessment. Blake Griffin is playing well, in this recent stretch. He, may have earned that starting center job back. In fact, he's one of the few guys that is at least playing with effort and heart. And Cam Thomas has, we always knew he had a little bit of a scoring punch, but it looks like he's gotten better and more polished as the season, more confident as the season has gone along, to the point where you start thinking, okay, can he be a rotation player in the playoffs?
Doing their jobs. I have Patty Mills and DeAndre Bembry. I think those guys have done their jobs all season.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would put Patty Mills in the playing well category too, even if he's had ebbs and flow. But I think Patty Mills has had a good season. He's just been tasked with doing a lot. But yes, doing his job for sure. His job description changes on a night-to-night basis, depending on who's in the lineup versus who isn't. And Bembry, that's fair. Like you mentioned, he's limited offensively. But of those redundant pieces, of the, I guess we'll call it the three-headed monster of Bembry, Johnson, and Brown, he's been the best of those 3.
All right, I got a good and bad category, and that's Nick Claxton and Bruce Brown.
Yeah, both of these. I mean, Bruce Brown.
I'll tell you that he had a great first half against the what they beat him by 30 the other night.
The Nuggets.
The Nuggets. Why he didn't play in that second half, I didn't understand that move by Nash.
Yeah, I didn't really understand it either. I haven't been getting so worked up about
that's fair. I'm pretty numb to it though.
I've kind of removed myself from the day-to-day in game right now because I do know what I just said before is true. So like, I'm not going to waste my energy getting too upset about Bruce Brown not playing in the second half. But Bruce Brown has had, he had a great year last year, and he brought something to the team as a starter, especially next to those guys. But he has not been the same level of player. He plays well off Kyrie. He still can sometimes bring you a different sort of look at that screen, that roll, the little floater. But overall has not been a great player this year. Claxton, he's frustrating because he showed those flashes, and even this year he had a stretch. But I'm almost done with him to the point where it's like, all right, you're either inconsistent or you're injured, and you're kind of limited overall, where it might not be it. That's why I keep bringing him up as, if he has some value around the league as possibly a piece to flip.
What was crazy about Claxton was, he hasn't played a ton of games in the 2-3 years he's been with the team, but he's played enough. And I think his career high going into this year was 19. And he just surpassed it. Like the other night, I think it was the Kings game where he had 23 or 25, 26, something around that 23 points number. But when they gave Day'Ron Sharpe some time, he like immediately surpassed Claxton's season high in a competitive game too. I think that was a game where Harden was dishing it. And I just looked at it and said, if Sharpe gets in and scores like 20 plus in his third or fourth game, how can you justify waiting 3 years for Nick Claxton?
Yeah, I mean, and the problem, like Sharpe did well because he came in and
played off Harden. If you play off Harden as a center, you're going to.
Sharpe is incredibly limited too, so that's not going to be a long-term fix. I don't know if they have, if Simmons is coming back, I'm not joking. You
want him to be the 5.
He's the 5, yeah. In
right.
My mind.
Okay.
But right now, their 5 positions a little rough. Blake, Lamarcus, but Lamarcus is very matchup specific. I want to see KD at the 5. If the roster, if they don't add that player there, but I think KD can play in some lineups at the 5. But Claxton had the chance to be that answer, and I kind of think he fumbled it.
All right, 2 more categories. We have the get off the roster category. That's Javon Carter and James Johnson. Any argument here?
No, I feel bad because I don't have any personal animus for Carter, but he's a bum. So it's just
call it how it is. Yeah,
no value add there whatsoever. And Johnson, there was a couple games maybe where you're like, oh, could he help them as like that big guy who can put switch and do all that? But there's a reason he's bounced around, and he's an end of the bench guy.
He's Jekyll and Hyde, and he's Hyde a lot more than he's Jekyll. Let's just be real. Talking about James Johnson, and then finally need to get healthy category. That's Lamarcus Aldridge and Joe Harris. Somehow those guys got to get healthy. Like we both assume Joe Harris is probably done for the rest of the season, but if you can get Aldridge back before All-Star game, at least give this Nets team a player to work the offense around. He plays great with Patty Mills. The Nets are really missing him in this stretch.
Well, I mean, especially because they're down so many guys otherwise.
Right.
So, I think Aldridge, like I said, I think he's matchup specific. I don't think, you can rely on him necessarily in the playoffs against certain teams. But in the grips of the regular season and in certain playoff series, like against Philly, for instance, you can use him as a big body and you can facilitate offense through him with the second unit. It gives you a different look offensively as well. Harris, it's hard for me at this point to. I'll be pleasantly surprised. Let me put it that way. If he's back and helping the team this year.
I'm with you. I hate to toot my own horn, but this past offseason, I said that Lamarcus Aldridge was the most important player the Nets brought in to play with the big 3. You can argue it's been Patty Mills or him, but I think he's been up there. All right, before we get to our rapid fire to end out the podcast, we did get a question. He asked if we both think the trade gets done. I know you gave your answer in the beginning of the episode. Your gut says it probably gets done. I would think that Harden remains a net. I don't think that Marks is going to get a deal he likes enough to pull the trigger. And I think also he's got Katie's opinion in the back of his mind. If Marks somehow breaks up the big 3 before letting them at least have a shot to win a championship together, I don't think that's going to resonate well with KD. I think, I understand he's under contract, but if you get rid of Harden and somehow you lose Kyrie this offseason, I'm not sure KD wants to stay here and start a new organization with Ben Simmons. So that's my thought. I know Robin mentioned, in the beginning of the show that he thinks the deal gets done, to answer your question.
Well, KD is also he's been highly complimentary of Simmons in the past. The best answer though is back to what we said before. KD signing a long-term extension has put off what could be, you could be looking at what the Nets went through all over again, right? Like the Pierce, Garnett, Darren Williams era rebuild with nothing to rebuild with. But the fact that they still have Kevin Durant, I just, if James Harden can come back committed, of course, my fear is just what they gave up for him, not recouping on that. So if I really believe he might not be here, good for them. There's not really teams with cap space that can sign him, like good teams with cap space. So it gives them maybe a little bit more comfort in taking the risky move. But if the ability to recoup on that trade is in front of you and you don't take it, that's what you could regret.
All right, we've arrived at the end of the episode. I got an excellent Nets rapid fire for you. 10 questions. Give me your first thought that comes to your head. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, Harden or Kyrie, more important for the Nets?
Kyrie.
Okay, better three-point shooter when healthy, Joe Harris or Patty Mills?
Patty Mills. Trust him more to knock down the big buckets.
Who does Kessler Edwards' game remind you of?
It's
a tough one right there.
Yeah. Trying to think of Jeremy Lamb.
I like that comparison. I would say maybe Shane Battier if he can get really good on defense. Number 4, best NBA Nets team of all time. And I said NBA because I do not want an ABA. They won the championship with Julius Erving. I get all that. NBA Nets team of all time. What year?
Last year's team.
Last year's team. There you go. That's the right answer. Which net will surprise people in the playoffs because they're actually going to step up to the plate and play well?
I'm trying to think if this person is on the roster yet. That's I mean, I would say Patty Mills is going to be the one that's going to anger people, like because he's going to hit those shots. But we just talked about Patty Mills. I'm trying to Cam Thomas.
I like that pick.
If he gets spot minutes, people don't know who he is, so he's going to.
More important to the Nets' success down the stretch, Lamarcus Aldridge or Blake Griffin?
Blake.
Wow. Okay, I'd probably go Lamarcus in that one. Number 7.
I think Blake is playable against more teams.
That's fair. Best Nets rookie this season has been
Thomas overall.
All right, Cam Thomas.
I was going to say Edwards, but it's starting to trend back the other way.
Number 8. Have we seen the lowest point of the season so far, or has that yet to come?
We've seen the lowest point.
I hope you're right, Robin. Number 9. Steve Nash is a blank coach.
Calm.
That's such a nice way to put it. And I hate that about him too. Number 10. If you can go back in time, would you keep Allen and LeVert, even knowing we get into this predicament with Harden, but not knowing what happens before the trade deadline and the rest of the season? Would you still make that trade?
Yes.
Yeah, me too, probably. All right, that does it. That was a good rapid fire, right? That was pretty good.
That was good. Yeah, good questions.
Very interesting. All right, Robin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a blast. Where can people find you on Twitter?
Yeah, at Robin Lundberg, ROBINLUNDBERG. Check out, we launched a new show at SI today called SI Feed. Check that out on my Twitter feed. Make sure you go to Sports Illustrated on YouTube, subscribe, and watch those videos, and more stuff to come. But that's the thing that dropped today, so that's what I'll plug.
No, hell yeah! Did you have a good time coming on the show?
Of course, man. I mean, look, I have things to say about the Nets, and I don't deal well with not being comfortable and this disarray and drama and all that stuff. So I hope I help others with because I don't think I'm crazy drinking Kool-Aid optimistic either. I think I'm rational.
I
about
thought
it.
you were pretty
So,
rational. Look, there's a reason Nick didn't come on the show today. He doesn't handle the stress and anxiety surrounding the team well, so he bounced. And also, he's never someone to inspire positiveness when it comes to the Nets. He just comes on the show. He shits on Kyrie Irving. He says James Harden is a bum, and he's pretty much the Grinch of this podcast. So I was actually happy that he didn't show up tonight.
there you go. Well, did the Grinch ever stay? What happened at the end of the Grinch? What happened?
I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen the flick.
I feel like everything was good in Whoville, so hopefully that's the case.
There you go. Maybe Whoville is Brooklyn. Robin Lundberg, thank you for coming on Fireside Nets with Spen and Nick, brought to you by Empire Sports Media. And as always, catch you on the fireside.